Before I pass this mic to audience and offer you this unique opportunity to ask a question to Commissioner, I will grab this question for myself, or maybe answer for myself. I just got through my emails, and I got an email from Daniel Mourek, like fighter for this green waste, and I know that you've been today out for a bike ride all over the Prague, and this email was like after meeting Janette, I have realized it's no use if we are only whining about local politics scene. We have to carry on with something new. So my first question would, what did you tell him, or what did you make it with him? Did he send such an email? And it brings me to another question. If you would be at the same position in the city, what would you do the first? Because you said like process can be shorter. So 2 questions.
Well, I don't like to tell cities what to do. I find that's not a great strategy, but I have some observations, and it was a great ride actually around Copenhagen. I mean, Copenhagen. That's the future. I'm already projecting forward. But Prague has the bones of a great sustainable system, and when you see the narrow streets, when you see the cobblestones, when you see the beautiful waterfront, it's exciting to see what can be done. I understand that the politics are somewhat complex, but one of the things, and that's not actually anything new, that every city struggles with that. And one of the things that I think made the biggest difference in New York was Mayor Bloomberg's Plan YC program, because it set an overarching vision of what the city should do across a wide spectrum if it wanted to grow and thrive. And there was a big buy-in, among the public to say, this is what we think we should do. And there were 10 different areas, and so that when you opened the door in 2030, you liked what you saw. And that overarching vision allows you to move forward then with specific programs. Everything that I talked about, from the buses to the bikes, to the improvements in the public realm, are nested in that overall program. And so it doesn't depend on just one mayor or one administration. This is now the program for the city going forward, and Plan YC has actually now been adopted into law. So by law, the city, the mayors, and the mayor's administration has to update what's the progress that's been made on the Plan YC every 4 years. And that really is an incredible opportunity then. Not everything that we've done is in Plan YC, but because that umbrella is there, because that vision is there, everybody can see where we're trying to get to. So having a vision for the city of Prague that everybody sort of buys into, and that you've got different components, a cycling component, a public realm component, an energy, a housing component. That's a really important piece, I think, to making sure that that progress is made and that progress continues that doesn't depend on a particularly innovative mayor or administration.
To follow on this, is this on? Yes. How much has the DOT been involved in the transportation strategy for the waterfront? Because I know there's been some conversation in Prague about improving the waterborne transportation, and there are situations in New York where this has been done.
Yeah.
So are you active in this as well?
Yeah, there's actually a blueprint for the waterfront that's been released. I think it's about a year old now. Amanda Burden, our zoning commissioner, refers to our waterfront as our 6th borough. So I guess it would be a 7th district here. Right. How many districts are there?
23rd probably.
So the 23rd district would be the waterfront. And I think that's actually an important orientation, because for so many years cities have turned their backs on their waterfront. They don't really appreciate what can be done. And so as part of Plan YC, we actually have a very strong mandate to embrace the waterfront. We're really a water-oriented city. And so we've launched new ferry service across the East River, which is completely renovated and re-energized and revitalized the communities on the Brooklyn side and the Queens side, and it's made a huge difference. So I think, and we've got new bike paths that are going through some of the areas that have not been connected in the past. And I had the pleasure of going on your High Line today, and that kind of an investment pays such huge dividends. I mean, that you know that in just a couple of years, that's going to the properties there are going to tremendously increase in value, and let alone with the activity that that generates. And so whether it's revitalizing old rail corridors or really revitalizing how you look at your city and maximizing your assets, the water here is incredible. I mean, you have an incredible river. It's a gift. And so maximizing that asset, I think, is an important part of your strategy going forward.
And what you said today and during your lecture was about valuing your streets, and it's about valuing sort of an urban landscape, putting not only social value on that, but ecological value. What you didn't talk about is some of the sustainable street initiatives with improving stormwater quality, and also valuing it from an economic perspective, because as I know from reading some of the research, there's a 71% increase, more or less, in business revenue in Times Square. Is that right?
No, it's actually more than that.
Okay.
It's doubled.
Well, and that's incredible. And so in what way are you working with public-private partnerships to sort of not only improve the quality of the streets, but improve the economic condition that is resulting from that?
Well, that's a really, really, really important question, because one of the pieces that I think people that cities have not focused on is that a sustainable transportation system, a sustainable strategy, is an economic development strategy. Because in the 21st century, companies can move anywhere, people can move anywhere, so the quality of life in your city is key, or people won't move there, and you won't continue to grow. And when you start to look at it that way, that it's the essence of creating economic performance and activity in your city, that changes the rules of the game. So we've done a lot to quantify the benefits of these kinds of investments. It is sometimes difficult to get that, certainly in the shorter term. But when we were riding around today, the areas that you're looking at closing to traffic, tracking that now, the before and after, is extremely important. And you can actually also go back to the areas that you've already closed and track the before and after and see how that goes, because that's extremely persuasive to some of the more traditional stakeholders in your community when you can show what the value added is. And what we've also seen, and this is research in London, pedestrians spend the most out of anybody in the transportation system, because you can get out, walk into a store quickly, easily. It's then followed by people on buses and people in cars. So the more pedestrian-oriented your city is, the better it is for business. And so getting the dollars and cents of that quantified and put together is also an important part of the program going forward.
Yeah, it allows the data to sort of make the decisions for you.
Right.
You can become apolitical in a sense.
In a sense.
Yeah. I think I have a million questions to ask the commissioner, but I would like to give it to the audience. But
you are from New York. You are both from New York, so let Prague speak. Okay, are there any questions in the audience? Yes, great.
Sorry, I'm unfortunately also from New York, but but first I want to say thank you, because I was briefly a bike messenger in New York, and so everything that you've done is just amazing and saves lives. And first of all, thank you for that. And I also I'm aware of Planet NYC's plan to basically increase the number of playgrounds in New York as well. And currently I'm an educational researcher in Berlin, so I know that in Berlin, you don't need a lot of space to have a playground. You can have like a playground just on like a street corner. And so I was wondering if your department or the Parks Department had any plans to, say, collaborate, and instead of having just a pedestrian like walking area, to also just have like, say, I don't know, like a playground in the middle of, I don't know, like whichever avenue, like that there's not enough room for.
Yeah, we do have a program where we work with schools, with the Department of Education, to find those places for kids to play. And a great program with the Department of Health, actually, that is focusing on this. Getting kids moving is key. Obesity is a huge problem in the United States, and I think a third of Americans are overweight or obese. And so getting to kids early and making sure that they've got opportunities to get out there and play is a big priority. So we've got a big program that's focused on that. I think we have increased it to like 100 new sites over the last 4 years.
Paul.
Well, it doesn't. May I ask you, who is paying for this wonderful plan? Is the business community contributing also or not?
Well, that is it. I'm so glad you asked that question, because the plan was developed by the city and the mayor's vision, and a guy named Dan Doctoroff, who was the deputy mayor there, that really spearheaded this plan. But the reason why Plan YC is not just any kind of a plan that collects dust on a shelf is the fact that the mayor in his budget put money into every single one of these programs and projects. So he put money into the bike program, he put money into the bus program, he put money into the plaza program. And that is why we are able to implement what we've been able to do. We also do as much as we can on the public-private partnership front. So for example, to pay for the bike share system, I raised $47 million from the private sector, the sponsorship piece. Because as we all know, with scarce budgets, you have to be creative about the way you move forward with these different plans and programs. So we do everything we can to collaborate and partner with the business community. But again, I think the reason why Plan YC sings the way it does is because the mayor made it a priority and put his money where his mouth was for the program.
Yes, if I may have a question. First of all, thanks for the inspiring lecture. I'm talking now. And actually I have also a question about this public-private partnership. And I would like to know, how optimistic are you for the future of this scheme to be working? Because it seems that it seems to be working when the project is initiated, because there is this kind of hype, when you are doing a good thing and everybody wants to participate. But what I understood is that the government or the body of the municipality simply initiates the project. But the question is, who is then paying for the upkeep of the things? What I understood is that the private side of the partnership should pay for the upkeep. Is that right? That you initiate the project and the upkeep for the future should be paid from the private funds?
What happens is we work with local communities and local business improvement districts, as they're called. And so the mayor made a very strategic decision that we were not going to create public spaces if they were not going to be maintained. And so what happens is these business improvement districts, they tithe, they pay money to a local organization that maintains the public plazas. They're by law required to do this. They have to sign a contract that says that they will continue to maintain these spaces. And the way they're able to generate the revenue to maintain these spaces and provide services is we allow them to hold different events there. So, there will be an event for, Nivea will sponsor the ball drop in Times Square, right, for New Year's Eve. And the money that's generated from there, being able to say that it's the Nivea ball drop, pays for the upkeep and the maintenance of Times Square. And we're seeing that all over the city. It's a really important point, though, because not every community has the financial wherewithal that the business district does in the heart of Midtown Manhattan, right? So what we've done is we're working right now to ensure that in more distressed neighborhoods that don't have the same kind of business revenues coming in, that we create a program for them so that we're actually giving them money to hire somebody to maintain the space, to start to organize the businesses, and working with the local botanical gardens to plant them and all of that. And then we sort of program that with them, and it again starts to create this new community. And that community then is really, it becomes energized, really revitalized through these kinds of programs, and that's how the program is maintained going forward.
So
Did that
actually,
answer your question?
Yeah, sort of. So if I understand it well, so at the beginning, at the this initiative, that you somehow input to the area, then before you invest some money, the local businesses have to sign a contract about the upkeep or about the future upkeep of the program which you simply implement. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. I just want to underscore, part of the reason for that is these are community-based projects. I don't impose them on communities. They come to us for them.
Hello. Okay. Hello, my name is Vítek Masarev from Automat Civic Association. First of all, I would like to thank you for a perfect lecture, which was really inspiring for us here, or at least I hope so. And my question is regarding the essential basis of all that happening in NYC, because what I miss here in Prague the most of all of what you said was not any particular technical solutions, but it was the vision. And you said that actually this Plan YC stands at the very beginning of all of that. And I'm very curious about how come that this plan was at all like designed and created, because now in Prague here we're going through a series of discussions where we try to address what sort of vision should Prague have, and the politicians are still far away from adopting any or searching for any such a vision.
Well, that's a great question. Because much like the planning exercise that you're going through right now, Plan YC actually started as a long-term planning exercise. It didn't start as a sustainability plan. It started saying, okay, well, we need to do a long-range plan for the city. What do we need to do? And what changed was this notion of we can't just keep planning the same way that we've done over the past 50 years and expect that we're going to have the city that we want to see, that we really need to take a comprehensive look across all disciplines and see what it is that we really need to do over the next 25 years. And the sustainability piece grew from that beginning long-term plan exercise. So there's no reason why your planning program could not be Prague YC or something. You know, you could do a very similar program probably and not change that much of what you've got going on, but that going across disciplines and involving everybody in the process, it's a very important piece to collaborate, to ask citizens, what do you want to see? What do you want to see happen? And so setting out some basic principles that people react to, it's not just what do you want to see, it's, you know, you have to have a platform to solicit the input. But once you have that, and you put that together and then you release that as the Prague plan, then it really is the Prague plan. It's the plan of the people, you know, all of Prague, not just some parts of Prague.
Maybe just one additional question. Who was then the initiator of this planning exercise?
That came from Mayor Bloomberg.
My name is Dara Pauliniova. I'm dealing with public spaces, but as well I'm a member of Bicycle Coalition from Bratislava, Slovakia. And I heard about community-based design, community-based projects, and about every night meeting with public. So it's quite interesting for me to listen or to hear a little bit more about what people from your department, so who does support the processes? So how do you speak to public? Are these engineers, are these facilitators, or how do you communicate, how do you involve people? I heard that people are coming to you, but it's probably about the use of the public spaces and streets. But when you are retrofitting the streets, is it about common design, or is it only about consultation? So how does the process look like when you come to the neighborhood and you are trying to change something?
Well, we've evolved into the application process because, and I think it's a really important strategy going forward. We didn't start, when I came here, it was not an application-based, you know, these programs really weren't there, and there was really no application to apply for. You couldn't apply for a plaza or apply for a bike lane or apply for a bus lane. You couldn't apply for anything. But now that these projects are out there and people have a sense of what they're about, what we did was we turned the solicitation around and created application programs so that people can apply to us. But the question about what do we talk about when we go out there is a very important one. So one of the ways that we've got a mix of engineers, planners, all disciplines, people that, are in communication, some people that don't have transportation planning background at all. There are 4,700 employees at the Department of Transportation. We run the largest ferry service in the United States. We've got the biggest bridge program, and we've got 6,000 miles of streets. So most of the department is engaged in those activities. But on the planning side, we have a very extensive program. When we go out, what we've started to do is ask the question of communities, what's the problem that we're trying to solve? So in your community, what's the problem? Is the problem speeding? Is the problem there's not enough space? Is the problem too many cars? What is the problem that you want to solve? And that's a very different conversation. Then you can actually come back with well, what about a bike lane? What about a plaza? What about a traffic calming intersection? And so the nature of the conversation has evolved then, where it's basically they're asking for what they think is needed in their communities. Now that doesn't, for programs that are of a citywide nature, that's different. Obviously, when we're trying to create a citywide integrated cycling network, we definitely go to communities with those bike lanes so that we can finish the network, and in similarly situated programs it works that way. But that changing the conversation with what is the problem that you have, and then offering some suggestions, and then working through those suggestions. That's why everybody's out every night, because that takes a lot of consultation. That takes a lot of foot leather to get that done.
Thank you.
Martin? I wanted to just say one thing. As the chairman of the conference, and to sort of follow up on something the commissioner said a minute ago, because I think it's important, and it links what she's talked about with the objective of reSITE, and it goes to Mayor Bloomberg's doing the Plan NYC initiative, which was very much his initiative. But being fortunate enough to, when that started, still be a resident of New York, and in that whole period of time, I've transitioned to being a resident here. I think it's also fair to say that one of the reasons that he undertook that was, I know that early in his first term, he did a lot of checking in with a lot of interest groups and economic leaders in the city and business leaders, and got a sense that there would be support and appetite for doing a couple things differently. Now, the mayor, I think, is a very courageous leader and didn't necessarily need to do that to have confidence that he was going to do something that would make a difference. But he also, I think, to underscore the implementation of this that the commissioners talked about, understood that people needed to want this. People needed to ask for it. And so there was checking in, and I think this is important about leadership here as the city here struggles to come up with a process from which to go forward. Because the social and business and interest group fabric of New York City essentially said that they would be engaged in this process. And they were. And that meant environmental advocates, it meant business leaders, it meant members of the real estate families. All the power groups in New York got involved in this process, some because they embraced it, some because they were kind of concerned about it, some because they were cautious. But the bottom line is they got involved. And I think you can all hear the result, and it's very, very important. So to the point of reSITE being today a conference, but a process, the process is important. And everybody from your own position has an ability to input into the process, and it is vital that you take this as an opportunity to do so.
Currently ongoing regeneration in Bratislava as well as in Prague. I see some of the modern luxury ghettos which are now occurring on the riverfront. And I'd like to ask you what are the feedbacks from the social inclusionary zoning policy, if you consider that as a successful strategy to implement some social mix on the riverfront in New York City, or yes.
I'm not sure.
What is the successful strategy to implement?
Oh, successful.
Successful.
I thought you said sexist.
No, successful. Sorry.
Well, again, the mayor has made this a priority, and a big part of it is the planning process for the waterfront. So there's been a big collaboration and outreach about what do we want to see on the waterfront? What do we want the waterfront to become? And then there's supportive zoning that goes around the development there. Amanda Burden, the planning commissioner, has rezoned, I think it's like a sixth of the city, which is a huge amount of the city. And again, encouraging the development, the redevelopment of the waterfront there, and to very positive end. You're seeing construction of buildings, and you're seeing affordable housing being included as part of the development pattern there. That would not have been there but for the zoning change and the new blueprint for the waterfront that the mayor released. So again, having that vision and then having the plan to execute it and involving all the stakeholders is really important. Also because people don't necessarily know what's going on. They don't even really think, people are engaged in their day-to-day, they don't really think about the world of the possible. What could it look like? What should it look like? What do we want to see? And that's all a very important part of the development strategy.
Any more questions? Okay.
So I'm Jiří Koten. I have a very easy question. What happened with all the cars? Because they used to be on the street and now they are not.
Thank you.
That's great. Well, you know, they found their way around. You know, it's really interesting, isn't it? You know, you can close streets and cars still manage to get around. And it's been interesting because we were able to prove that cars were able to get around with all of these interventions, because all of the 13,000 yellow taxis in New York City have global positioning systems in them. And so I can track the speed of traffic through these GPS devices and see how it's flowing. I get about 1.3 million records every month, so I know exactly what's happening on the streets, and we were able to show that traffic moved just as well, if not better, than it did before. So, you know, it's sort of counterintuitive again, but when you have the data and you can show that no, traffic isn't better, traffic isn't worse, it goes a long way. Because the bottom line is that any time you interview a cab driver, say in New York City, like, what do you think about the Department of Transportation's plans, you know, for Times Square? Has it made traffic worse?
No.
No, they say yes. That's made it horrible. It's made it horrible. They hate it. And in fact, if anybody knew that if any cabbie knew that I was the transportation commissioner, I'd be dead, you know? But the bottom line is that you can make these changes and traffic will adapt. All of these changes have happened, and, you know, we don't have, you know, it's not like Midtown is stuck in traffic and, you know, nothing's moving. So there's been some really good research also that's shown that these Mogridge corridors will show that, you know, and it's been proven across the world, you know, adding a new lane for traffic, you know, lasts like that in terms of helping capacity. As soon as you build it, it's used, it's filled up. So you're not doing anything to address congestion. If you really want to make your city move better, you've got to look at public transit. You have to look at cycling. You have to look at your fabulous streetcar system. Your streetcar system is the envy. I mean, I was drooling looking at your streetcar system. It's the envy of the United States. So maximizing that, extending your subway system, extending your streetcar system, looking at what you can do to make it easier to walk around and bike around, you know, you're going to own the globe if you pull that off, because that is exactly what it takes. And so, you know, traffic finds its own way around, and there's plenty of options to get around by car.
What about the parking? Because if you have parking in front of the house, if you have parking in front of the houses, and suddenly there is a bike line, what happened to the parking?
Yeah, no,
so because I'm asking, I like it very much, but I know that these are the topics which are discussed here.
No, it's very, parking is seen as a very precious thing in New York as well, you know, and nobody likes to lose a parking spot. But what we do is we can't turn our streets into parking lots. You know, that's not the highest and best and efficient and sustainable use of the valuable real estate that we have. It's just not a working strategy. So what we need to do is find other ways and move parking away. And so part of what we're doing is when we're zoning different parts of the city, we're reducing the parking that's required in different developments. And that's a very important piece for new construction, and we're really orienting around transit. It doesn't work in all parts of the city. That's not true in all parts of the city, and we zone different parts of the city differently. When there is no public transportation, you have to have effective parking for people to get around. But in parts of the city where you've got a lot of options, where you've got a lot of ways to get around, you know, most people in Manhattan don't have a car. You know, they don't own a car, and so you don't have that same demand. And we're starting to see a lot of increased demand, particularly in the younger generation. For nobody wants to have a car. You know, below 30, you're seeing the fall off in people that are applying for driver's licenses because they really like the idea of a zip car life. You know, zip life. You know, zip and you've got your bike, and zip and you've got your car. You don't have to own it and maintain it and pay for it. It's very expensive. It's $10,000 a year to own and maintain a car. So, you know, that's $10,000 that could go to education. That's $10,000 that can go to healthcare. That's $10,000 that can go into savings account. And so it's just not necessarily a smart decision from a dollars and cents perspective. And I think that's starting to become more and more evident. That doesn't take away from the fact that every time you move a car out of a lane, it can become an excitable event. But again, you know, it's pointing to that larger strategy of what we're trying to do. When we were removing parking in some spots on First Avenue, we're taking some parking spots away. But I have 50,000 people a day using the bus on First Avenue. You know, does it make sense to put the one parking spot for the one person who drives the one car? Or does it make sense to have a broader look to take care of 50,000 people? So, you know, it's a long, engaged process. Not everybody's happy with it all the time. But I think it's starting to pay big dividends citywide. And even in the areas where people started out as skeptics, you're starting to see, you know, a lot more buy-in.
Okay. I would like to maybe close this discussion because it's already taken as much time as the lecture. So it seems like Janette, Sadik-Khan spot or the reSITE conference, whatever. We would like to thank you on behalf of reSITE and also, I believe, audience. Thank you for your interesting lecture and all your valuable comments and very pragmatic comments. And yes, definitely.
I just would like to close with one moment. I think the biggest thing that we learned this evening was that we need strong leadership no matter where we live. Strong leadership gets things done, and we need clear vision and commitment to that vision. And I think Commissioner Sadik-Khan has demonstrated both commitment and strong leadership. And it's admirable and it's inspiring for not only designers, but I think for others working in municipalities and government. So thank you very much for coming. It's an honor to have you here, and we're looking forward to seeing you back in New York.